I suppose one can say that, I suppose every novelist feels, every young novelist feels that it's great fun. The writing of fiction is great fun at first, because you're inventing characters, you're manipulating them, sense of power, a sense of delight in manipulating language too. But as time goes on, and when one has, composed one's 30th novel, one realizes that one has been playing with fire all the way along. It's a very difficult form, a very difficult art form indeed, and the disciplines, the techniques involved are tremendously difficult.
But are you now deliberately choosing to subsume great areas of subject matter into a new book? I mean, Any Old Iron has a vast scope, both in time and in place.
Yes, but of course it doesn't deal with the present, unfortunately, except by implication. I think the thing finishes in the 50s. There's a great danger, I think, in my own case, that living abroad as I do, and I may instance James Joyce at a far higher level. Joyce was not able to write about the Dublin of, say, 1922. He had to write about the Dublin of 1904. I think I must hide myself away in some London suburb and get around, listen to the speech, read the papers, and attempt to do what a novelist should do, namely deal with his own time.
I mean, you're saying that's not what you've been doing recently.
I don't think I've been doing that recently, but I don't think perhaps it matters a great deal. Dickens didn't deal with his own time. He dealt with, about 50 years back. There's nothing wrong with that, but on the other hand, one possibly has a duty to explain to one's, contemporaries, one's younger contemporaries, especially what the world is they're living in. And the Thatcherian world is a reality, and I haven't touched it.
So there will be more novels?
If I live, yes. It's my trade.
When you returned from the East, you were told that you wouldn't live, that you would die.
Yeah.
Did you believe it?
No, I don't think anybody does. Looking back now, I see that I was driven out of the colonial service, I think possibly for political reasons that were disguised as clinical reasons. My poor first wife was told that I had an inoperable cerebral tumor, and they gave me to cover themselves a year to live. She tried to keep the secret, but could not, and eventually divulged it to me. I didn't feel too bad about it. I thought it was not true. In any case, I'd been given a year. I've not been given a year since.
But you sat down and you didn't do
I sat down,
bottle. You sat down and started to write.
I sat down with a sense of duty to my prospective widow, and tried to make little money. It was very difficult. You could never make much money with writing, to fulfill what talent I had and produce the works I did. It can be done. If you write 2,000 words before breakfast, you've got the rest of the day to yourself. And I did, in fact, produce very nearly 6 novels in that year. This, of course, didn't earn admiration. It earned resentment and sneers. Have you written your monthly novel yet, Burgess? That kind of thing.
Do you still write so fast?
No. But I think that nobody can write without discipline. You can't say, let's wait for the inspiration to come. It doesn't come. It doesn't work.
So do you sit down at a desk every morning?
Yes, sit down at the desk.
Every single morning?
Every single morning, including weekends. Yes.
This morning?
Oh, this morning I'm in London. I'm on a sort of holiday. I'm with you. I mean, this is not a working day.
Do you rework what you've written? Do you go back over it?
I don't rework it. The way I write has much to do with the way I write music. You see, look at it this way, a very simple way of looking at it. The music paper, especially scoring paper, is very expensive. You can't afford to spoil anything. You better get it sorted out in your head, in your ear, in your inner ear, before you get it on paper. Like Sibelius. Sibelius heard the whole symphony and wrote it down without making any changes. I like to get a page organized
and the book
acceptable, and then the next page, and the next page, and so on.
And do you think the whole book through before you?
I don't think anybody can. I think one can roughly proceed up to a point. I think wasn't it Porter who said that in Passage to India he got it as far as the Malabar caves, but not further. And Joyce said, don't work too much at thinking what the characters are going to do. They'll take over.
Some people say that when the characters and the story are humming along, you can't resist the temptation to show off a bit, to put in wordplay, to tell us about language.
I don't know why people call this showing off. I should imagine it was does Rabelais, does Shakespeare show off? Does Shakespeare show off? Shakespeare's always introducing strange words like Orgulous. They kissed away kingdoms. That's a very daring thing to say. But breaks me that some Antony Cleopatra is a show-off play, if you like. But I don't feel that. I don't feel that at all about my own work. I think that Shakespeare's a great model, always. I mean, he's the man we should read, learn from. And he was a tremendous player with words.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
But they're there for our entertainment, or because they're utterly germane to the style?
I think it's possibly an unworthy feeling, an unworthy conviction that in fiction, in any kind of verbal art, words should be one of the characters. Words should be characters. Language should be a character in itself. I'm not suggesting that what I write is superior. God forbid to say what Freddie Forsyth writes, but it's two different ways of writing. Freddie Forsyth gives you a transparent language. You can look through it, get at the action itself. Whereas with me, the language is a bit more opaque. It's just the way we are.
Is autobiography a sort of fiction? You talk as if you...
Oh, yes, I think so. One may place the past to some extent. The past doesn't just flow over one. One does make the past to some extent.
How different will the second volume of your autobiography be from the first one?
The second volume is written, it's completed, but it has not yet been published. The second volume will deal with the most painful part of my life, the part of my life in which I was trying to earn a living as a writer with great difficulty, in which my first wife was gradually succumbing to the fatal disease of cirrhosis at the period of her death, and then my final resurrection, rehabilitation, and life with my second wife. Happily, I think.
Are you writing any music these days?
All the time, but of course it's never heard in this country, never heard in England. The music is played abroad quite a number of times. I think there's some idea in this country that you can't be both a writer and a composer. But if I may boast, in this last 6 months I've had a symphony performed in Strasbourg, a work for orchestra performed in Geneva, a setting of a poem by D'Annunzio performed in Amsterdam and Sportorno in Italy, and only last Saturday a concerto for guitar and 4 guitars and orchestra performed in Cannes, and a symphony performed in Strasbourg.
What sort of music do you write?
It is what they call post-tonal. It uses a regular orchestra, regular bar lines. The rhythms are irregular. It is not Pierre Boulez quite. It doesn't avoid melody. It is, I think, occasionally euphonious. It is well structured.
Are you more proud of that than of the writing?
Well, consider, you see, sitting in a concert hall in Cannes, the Salle du Bussy in Cannes last week, with an audience, say, of 1,000 listening to my work. Watch their faces. You get a response. And at the end, you get applause. You don't get that with a novel.
Some people have said, looking back at your work, that this society, critics and public, haven't accorded you the recognition that you really deserve, that we don't treat you as a great man living in our midst, which we ought to do. Do you feel that?
Oh, God forbid. I never feel myself great. I'm a little worried, I suppose, at the fact that when I produce a book, there's a tendency on the part of critics to have a bit of a laugh, you know. Burgess is too prolific. Too prolific. God said, no, go forth and multiply. As for honours, no, I don't get those. I don't expect. I get them from other countries, not here. It's rather embarrassing. Monsieur Mitterrand made me a commandeur des arts et des lettres. I had to apply to Mrs. Thatcher for permission to accept it. But Mrs. Thatcher said, "Oh, so sorry. We'll give you the same." Well,
You said earlier in this that you were still hoping to write something which put the whole of yourself into a fiction in a way that you hadn't yet achieved. Yeah. Is there a hole, without a W, a hole in your work that's yet to be filled?
I don't. I think we're pretty well fragmented, all of us. I think it's impossible to see oneself as a whole. I think all one can do is to create characters, or try to create characters that represent some part of oneself. One can never create a single character that contains the whole of oneself. I don't think even Shakespeare could do that. Characters are always fragments of the personality of the creator. Is Hamlet Shakespeare? Yes. So is Antony.
If little Wilson bumped into Big Burgess in front of us now, what would he say to him?
Oh, I say, come off it. Or what has already been said to me in Manchester, he's turned into a stuck-up, opinionated bastard. So that's the Mancunian response to anybody who's left the city and tried to achieve something in the bigger world.
Anthony Burgess, thank you very much.